Yo, what's up? Welcome to another episode of AMA with LCJ. I am your host, Latoya Collins Jones. And I must say, I'm excited to be here with you all. It is a privilege to come on and chat with you all about leadership topics. It is something I am super duper passionate about. And so today, I'm particularly passionate about the topic today, largely because it's something I've dealt with as a leader. And so we're going to be talking about burnout, right? Are you leading to balance or burnout or balance, whichever it is, as a leader? And so today, as we dive into this topic, if this is your first time watching, thank you for joining me. If it's your second time watching me, thank you for coming back. If you've been here more than twice, I appreciate your support. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on in today. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about as we think about burnout and balance, really as it pertains to leadership. And I know that this topic has probably been run into the ground, but here's what I'll tell you. This is why I'm still going to talk about it. As we look at the ever-changing landscape of the workforce, especially those who are in tech, we're continuing to see a lot of people still struggling with burnout, still struggling with trying to find balance in their work. And what I want to do is somewhat demystify and broaden our idea or understanding of what is burnout, what leads to burnout, and then what we can actually do to combat that. So I'm hoping that what you get out of today's episode really is one, that you look at yourself as a leader, or if you're an emerging leader or individual contributor, what are some things that you can be doing to really think and understand, like, am I burned out? Am I headed towards burnout? What does this look like? And then the second piece of the puzzle that I really want to encourage you with is also looking at your team. And is your team struggling with burnout? And then what you can do with that. If this is your first time watching, also, I want to let you know I have this nifty tool here that it actually allows me to see all of your questions. So if you have questions, you have comments, all of the things, you can drop them right into the chat, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll be able to answer any questions that you have, particularly around this topic. Okay, so let's hop in. So one of the things that I wanted to start in was, like, let's ground ourselves, just in general, on what burnout is. How do we define burnout? And so I wanted us to at least get started. When we think about burnout itself, how do we go about defining it? What does it look like? When I think about burnout, I think that it looks and feels different based on your personality, on your it's a lot of individual understanding of what burnout is. But if I were to go in and say, how could I define it? Well, let me pull up my notes here. I didn't I forgot to do that. I didn't pull up my notes. Hey, what's up, Jana? Welcome back. Let's see. So if we were going to define burnout, right? I think it's a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about what I think drives it, but this is kind of what we would say burnout is. It's described as a state of emotional, physical, or mental exhaustion caused by excessive or prolonged stress. That's what burnout is, right? And so described as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. Now, why is this important that we kind of understand this? The thing is, stress is a part of our jobs, stress is a part of our lives, but burnout comes when it becomes prolonged and excessive. Okay. Now, we're going to talk just about a couple things about how we actually go about defining this. So, what are some ways that we see burnout? Like, I think that burnout occurs. I'm going to cover a couple of them, but then I'm actually going to cover some that I think just don't get talked about enough. Okay, so one of the ones that we hear all the time is overworked, too much work, right? So You have an excessive workload, you have tasks, you don't have enough time to complete the task. By the time you get done with that task, there's more tasks, and it just keeps piling up over and over and over again. And so you have this pressure that comes from just always being in a state of like stress and feeling like you have to be productive. And if you don't get your to-do list done, then you just have failed at life. That's kind of one of the things. So too much work. That's one of the ways that you often see burnout showing up. Now, this next one is another one that shows up. Too little work. Now, I know you heard me say too much work, but also too little work also leads to burnout. Let me explain. So what happens is the reason why like an insufficient workload can lead to burnout really is because what happens is you start to lose engagement. You underutilize your skills. You start to feel undervalued, right? Insignificant, detached from your work. That is what too little of work can do. And not having enough work to do, not feeling valued, stuck, like kind of, I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I have enough work to do. I'm being underutilized. This in and of itself can lead to excessive, remember we talked about this, excessive and prolonged stress, which can ultimately lead to burnout. Right. And this particular one, what starts to become tough about too little of work and it leads to burnout is because if we're not mindful of this as leaders, you will find yourself in a question of wondering like, man, what happened with that person? I thought that they were good, right? I'm trying to figure out how I could have done this better. I always make sure that when you're checking in with your team, hey, tell me what your day looks like. What's your work? How are things going? Do you have enough to do? Do you feel like you have a little bit more bandwidth in your system? Right? Like I'm constantly asking questions as a leader, understanding where my team members' capacities are, right? Because that allows me to be mindful of if they have too much work or too little work, because too much work and too little work both can lead to burnout. So, and here's what I love. When you start to get really in tune with your team, life has ebbs and flows, right? Life has ebbs and flows. And as one of the things I did as a leader is really understanding what's kind of going on. I don't know all the nitty gritty details of their life, but I could sometimes gauge when somebody maybe needs their bandwidth shortened just a little bit, and some people have a little bit more based on where they are, just in seasons of life. And so you've got to kind of figure those out, having those conversations. So too much work, too little work can lead to burnout. Thank you all. For those of you all who are just joining me, make sure you drop in and say, hey, where you're watching from as well. Also, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to drop them in the chat. I'll be able to see them all. All right. So now we've covered too much work, too little work. What else can lead to burnout? Poor leadership. Now, under poor leadership, there's a wide array of things that we could cover with this, right? Leadership dynamics really do play like a pivotal role, right? In understanding, number one, your team dynamics, as well as individual well-being, right? Let me help you understand what's going on, Sierra. Thank you so much for joining me. So like one of the things that we go in and we look at, right, from a poor leadership standpoint, why this leads to burnout. If you've had a poor leader, help me, like matter of fact, don't, as my pastor would say, don't look to the left or to the right, just look straight ahead. This is a straight ahead moment. Don't even put in the comments. But if you've had a leader where you don't feel supported, where there's unclear communications, unrealistic expectations, failure to recognize or reward your contributions, not managing the team or others well, all of these things can drastically increase your stress as a result of that. I will tell you, this is one of the reasons why I am so passionate about leadership, is because, I often think that, actually, let me rewind. Leadership is a privilege, right? You've earned your way to be called a leader, or those of you all who are aspiring to be leaders, you earn your way up there. some more than others. That's for another day to discuss, right? But we get to do this. We get to lead others. It is a privilege. And so what happens is when you have poor leadership, it starts to trickle down in all the different and permeate through all the different spaces and places in your organization in trying to actually achieve your goals and the vision that you've set out, right? I am a firm believer. I tell people all the time, if you find somebody who may be struggling in other areas of their life, a part of me always questions where do they work and who their leader is. Find me somebody who has a horrible boss that's happy. Don't worry, I'll wait. It's not possible. So poor leadership, and here's the thing. Even if we go too much work, too little work, not enough clarity, which is another one, too much ambiguity, all of that spawns from poor leadership. And so as leaders, as we are looking at how do we figure out burnout for ourselves and burnout for our teams, these are the things that we have to start to look at. Now, I will say, I'm sorry, y'all. I've got like notes in two places, like tripping. um, but when we look at what does this look like for us? Number one, leaders, you have to take care of yourself. If you are burned out, your team will shortly follow. I put in my newsletter for those of you all who aren't subscribed to my newsletter. You can go to latoyacollinsjones.com. But in there, I dropped this one little nugget, and it came to me as I was writing the newsletter this morning, or not. Yeah, this morning. I was like, man, so early. I was finishing out the newsletter this morning, and one of the things that came to me as I was finishing it out was, leaders, your team does not follow your quotes; they follow your cues. So the number one thing that you have to do is lead by example, which means you have to pause enough to understand, hey, am I even headed towards burnout? If I am, I probably need to take some time off so that I can reset and go to my team. If you have a leader who is burned out, that leader is not making great decisions. Then leader's probably not communicating well, and that leader's probably struggling to manage the team too. Trickles down. So, lesson of the day, number one for leaders is your team will follow your cues, not your quotes. So, if everything that we talk about in how to actually combat burnout and find balance, if you are not doing this as a leader, good luck. And I get it, because sometimes in some roles, it's not always easy for us to do certain things, but you can still find a level of balance within it. Okay. So, any questions so far? Make sure you drop them in the chat, and then we can go from there. That was not good. I don't know if that blinked on you all's end, but I hope not. Bandwidth is struggling today. Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, so now let's discuss leaders. What do I do if I'm burned out? What do I do? I feel like I'm in a constant state of stress. I feel like I have this growing list of to-dos. Nothing ever gets done. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. If you find yourself in all of these things, you're probably headed towards or already burned out. Let me tell you how I started to realize I was burned out. I love working. I actually like working. I like creating. I like coming up with ideas. I like building them and tinkering with things. I am typically one who runs to Mondays. I run to Mondays. Like, that was I love work. I loved working. I love working with my team. I just love the work that I did, all of the things. But what was happening was I recognized I wasn't running to Mondays. I was running to Fridays. That was one of the very first signs that I knew that I was burned out. I am living for the weekend if I can just get to Friday. Now, here's the problem with this. How much time do we spend at work? You spend a majority of your week working. which means I'm of the belief that you should enjoy what you do because we spend so much time at work, right? And I get it. You have to work, make means, make ends meet. You've got to do all the things, right? But I'm telling you, if you find yourself running to your days off, because a weekend off is not going to cure burnout. Ask me how I know, right? Taking a weekend off, taking 2 days off is not going to cure burnout if you're burned out. If you are legitimately burned out, it's probably going to take you 2 to 6 weeks. Real talk, right? You're like, yo, Toya, I don't have 2 to 6 weeks. We got to figure something out. You may have to take them 2 weeks at a time, right? But this is kind of a sign as a leader. If you're struggling to make decisions, if you find yourself, one of the things, I'll tell you another good sign of if you are struggling with burnout. I'm naturally, I'd say I'm a positive person, but I'm also a realist. In the process of struggling with burnout, your cynicism goes up. Everything is wrong. Nothing matters. Like, you expect the worst and think the worst. That's another sign that you may be potentially burning out. So as leaders, these are things we need to think. Am I running to Fridays? Like, do I feel like nothing is right now and I can't figure anything out? It's another sign of burnout. Am I exhausted all the time? Am I struggling to make decisions? I'll tell you another sign I think for me was burnout was I wasn't confident anymore. I had lost so much confidence in myself because I was just trying to I just felt like I was just behind all the time. I was burning out, right? Trying to burn the candle at both ends, not sleeping, trying to like solve all of the world's problems in a very short amount of time. And I wasn't figuring out how to find some level of balance, even though I had time baked into my calendar. There were just certain things that were burning me out outside of just the work itself. Which I think it's important that you go back and I talk a lot about communication and open lines of communication, right? Fostering a team where you have open communication can help you identify if you were burned out and you can communicate that up, or if your team is burned out and they can communicate that up to you. And you can communicate that down, right? One of the things that I think about, because I do think burnout became like a very buzzwordy thing. Um, but I won't say and I do not believe that organizations take it serious enough. I don't think they take it serious enough. I think a lot of times organizations will say, well, like, we recognize these are hard times, lack of empathy, and we're all working to get things done. Once again, you still not hearing me. We value the work that you do during these hard times. Make sure you use your EAP, right? Like, make sure you use your for those who don't know, like, EAP is like employee assistance program, like therapy or whatever. Typically companies cover that, right? Here's my issue with this. This is my issue with organizations and their sentiment towards burnout. They're how do I hold on? It's coming to me. Stay with me. My issue with organizations and how they handle burnout is because typically they will say it's your problem, not theirs. That's my issue with organizations as it pertains to burnout. If you're struggling with burnout, they'll say, take some time off. Maybe need to figure it out. But it's a you problem, not a us problem. It couldn't possibly be our culture. It couldn't possibly be how we work. It's you. Now, in that vein, in that sentiment, you tell me if that helps or it makes it worse. And so how we deal with burnout within our teams and for our teams as leaders and as organizations matters drastically on whether we continue to contribute to it or we actually help, right? So y'all are quiet today. Man, this must be this must be an interesting topic here. So as we're talking about burnout, I want to make sure that if you have any questions, be sure to ask them. Drop them in the chat because I want to be able to answer any questions you all have really around finding balance and finding burnout. So one of the things that I want us to really think about is how do we actually combat burnout? You'll say, hey, Toya, this is great. I can't take 2 to 6 weeks off. That's not possible. What does this look like for me? I think I'm edging towards burnout. Number one, take some time off. Take some time off. If you find a way, actually, you know what? Let me take that back. Let me rewind. Before I even say take some time off, one of the things that I struggled with a lot, and I've gotten so much better at, which is understanding your to-do list is never going to get done. Say it with me. My to-do list will never be done. There's always something to do. Okay. Where I think stress comes in, especially for leaders and high leaders, is as the to-do list gets added, we just keep adding it. It all feels important. And I've talked like ad nauseum about the Eisenhower matrix and like what's important, what's urgent, all of these things, right? So you've always got stuff added to the to-do list. But if you don't pause and plan, right? If you don't pause and plan, this is where the stress comes and it becomes hard to take off. I can't tell you to even take off and like unplug mentally and emotionally from the work that you're doing if you believe that rest and like taking a break is a privilege. It is not a privilege. It is a requirement. You have to rest to be effective as a leader. You have to take time away to be effective. It is not a privilege. It is a requirement of good leadership. I'm really passionate about this. Thank you, Sierra. Sierra said, my to-do list will never get done. I appreciate it. It's essential. Exactly. Rest is essential. So as you are looking and thinking about this, right, in order to be able to take time off, you've got to know the lay of the land. And so you've got to have a method for all the crap that's coming in, because everything that's coming in and coming at you and all the stuff that gets added to the to-do list, something is going to get, it's either going to get done, delegated, or deleted. Those are your three options. Am I going to do it? Am I going to delegate it, or am I going to delete it? If I'm going to do it, when am I going to do it? If I'm going to delegate, who can I delegate this to? Because it doesn't actually technically require me to do it. Or do I really need to do it? Now, what starts to happen is as you get better at managing what's happening, what's coming in, it becomes easier when you're taking time off to figure it out because you know where you're going to pick up. You know where you're going to come back. Right? And so one of the things that I would encourage you to do is, and I'm actually due to do, I'm probably going to work on this even myself today, because as running my own business, right, making sure I don't burn out in the process, is what is your system? You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. What's your system for incoming requests? Right? What do you currently have on your plate? Because eventually, like, your plate's not going to get bigger. You're just going to keep piling more food on it. Then you're going to have mashed potatoes on top of the green beans, and you keep put corn, and then you got chicken on top of the turkey, right? Your plate's not getting bigger. Newsflash. So you've got to figure out what to take off, keep what's essential, and then start tackling that. But you've got to get a lay of the land. Okay? Now that I've talked about that, now we can talk about taking time off. Because it's easier to take time off when you know what you're coming back to. You know how things are going to run, what it looks like. This is why it's important to delegate and get comfortable delegating work to your team so you can take time off and not have to worry about the team. True story. Let me tell you what I started doing. Probably, I'd say 6 months or so, um, before I left corporate, maybe a little bit before. This is how my out of office read. Real talk. I'm going to give you the abridged version. Basically, my out of office said, "Hey, I'm out of office. I'm not here. I don't have access to email. I'm not checking my email. If it's urgent, you can contact this person. Also, to let you know, I will not be coming back and combing through my emails when I return. Feel free to send this again when I return." Sure did. Sure did. Because what happens is, especially if you have a heavy email culture, you come back from vacation and you sit at your computer and you open your email. This is me opening my email, and you type it in and you open it. And what do you see? 4,000 gazillion emails staring at you in the face. And I know people who will actually sit and spend an entire day parsing through that stuff. And let's be honest, 80% of emails don't actually matter, or they've already resolved themselves by the time you get back. So that's what I did. Yo, I'm gone. I'll be returning on this day. Feel free to resend this after this date. And then when I would come back from vacation, you know what I would do? Archive everything that wasn't there. Like literally anything that was new, archived, gone out of my mind. I basically start from zero when I come back from vacation. And some people are like, "How do you do this?" Like here's how I do this. This is really how you start to figure out how to combat burnout. You've got to figure out how to unplug and make sure that you don't burn out all of your good rest day one coming back. It's got to be able to, like, right? If you go in and you are completely burned out, you take some time off, you're starting to feel like yourself, you feel refreshed, and then you log in and it immediately dissipates, then what was the point of taking off? So you've got to find a way to protect your peace in the process. That was one of the ways that I did it. Was it popular? Probably not. Did I care? I did not. Because when I show up, I'm showing up for my team. Right? And so it was very important that I show up for my team. And the best thing that I can do to show up as a team is come back as a rested and healthy and happy and positive and refreshed leader, so that I can come in and come up with new ideas and really have time and the mental capacity to think, to make us a better team. If I leave burned out and I come back burned out, doesn't do the team any good. Okay? So, that's kind of one. Now, in the vein of taking time off, I want to make sure that the other piece of the puzzle that you do as a leader is you encourage your team to take time off. Remember, your team follows your cues, not your quotes. If you take off and you truly unplug, your team will do the same. It gives them permission. One of my rules of thumb, if I was working late, because I was flexing, right? I was flexing my time that day, or I'm working early, or I'm working late. I would pause my emails to either to send the next morning or to send at the start of the business day for them. Microsoft has that feature. I don't know who else has that feature. I know Microsoft does, like Outlook did. Why did I do that? Because I didn't want my team seeing sometimes, like, hey, if their email is attached to their phone, which a lot of people were, that they would get a ping and see like, oh, she's emailing me at 5 a.m. and feel the pressure to respond. Nope. I would just pause it and then keep it rolling, right? But make sure your team takes time off too. That was probably one of my biggest things and pet peeves. My team would take off. Like there would be times like I see somebody take like, hey, I already know you're off for the week. And they would pop in and I'd see the little bubble go green. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing online? Oh, I had to, what are you doing online? Why are you even in the team chat? I would get on them because it's important that they rest as well. And I became a stickler for this. I don't know, like if you probably ask anybody who was on my team, I was such a stickler for this. Um, because it's important. It's important for the team. It's important for them. It's important for the team, and it should be as important for the organization. Okay. So those are kind of a couple things. No questions today. If there are no questions, I'm going to keep it rolling, and we'll kind of dive into some other things that I think would really help um, with finding balance in combating burnout. So I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to assume you all are good. Those of you who all who are watching on YouTube or X or LinkedIn. So here's one of the things that I want to talk about. I talk a lot about winning day to day, and how you manage day to day really does matter in terms of combating burnout and how you're finding balance. So, what are some ways that you can win day to day as a leader to help really kind of find the balance? Number one is making sure you're setting realistic goals and prioritizing those tasks. Not everything is important, not everything is urgent. And you have to be diabolically discriminatory in that. Like, you have to be ruthless in pruning what tasks actually count or move you towards your goals and what doesn't. You have to learn how to say no. Because if you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? Don't overcommit. I used to be a chronic overcommitter because I was also a people pleaser in the worst type of way. I just wanted to make everybody happy. But I had to learn to start saying no. So, for those of you all who struggle with saying no, and your inability to say no adds to your stress and your tasks and your never ending to do list, I'm going to give you a hack. So, one of the things, one of my very first tools in, I'll say my road to recovery on people pleasing, instead of saying yes out of the gate, I would pause and I'd say, hey, can I get back to you on this? And what this did was it gave me a moment to actually think about if I wanted to do this, should I be doing it? And if sometimes, even if there's somebody else who's better suited to do the thing. I would, if I think back on many times like where I found myself potentially like in a burnout scenario, it's because I probably didn't say no enough, right? And I took on too many tasks and now I'm stressed and now I'm overloaded with work. So the very first you don't have to say yes the minute somebody asks you to do something. Teach your team leaders, they don't have to say yes to every request that comes across. Give yourself some breathing room to pause and say, hey, let me actually get back to you. When do you need a response? I just want to say, hey, let me get back to you. When do you need a response for this? Oh, I need it by end of business. And if it's like 4 o'clock, I may even say, hey, actually, can you give me till tomorrow afternoon? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because here's what I learned. News alert. Not everything that people say is important and urgent is important and urgent. You'd be amazed how much breathing room you can give yourself by just asking, hey, what does your timeline actually look like? Don't assume that it's now. That helps with your to-do list. I hope this is helping. Y'all are quiet today. So I'm either running down the street. I'm either running down y'all street and y'all have gotten quiet on me, or I am missing the mark. So I'm gonna need some feedback in the comments, y'all. Um, Jessica, you say that is hard when you have an ambitious boss. Yes, it is. And so here's what I'll say. There's two things. When you are a leader, working for a leader of leaders, right? Or you are the main leader. There's a couple things I think about when I think about how we manage up. Okay. One of the things we talked about was this to-do list. Like, what does your spread look like? If you have a way, a system of being able to say, this is what's on my plate. It's not sitting in email, right? It's not sitting on your desk on a sheet of paper, right? I got really good at this and trying to get better at like, and I'm even doing it. I do it now, right? I use an app called Todoist. Microsoft has To Do. There are a gazillion apps in place. There's Asana, there's Trello, Todoist, Microsoft To Do. I think Wonderlist has come back, Notion. Like I could keep going. There's gazillion OneNote. Like I could name lots of things that allow you to see your work. Burnout also, oh man, I'm so glad you said this, Jess. This just got me all fired up. Because what happens is burnout happens because sometimes we don't even see our work. We can't even see what we have going on. And so if you can't see it, even when you have or you're working for a leader who's pushing down for more things to happen, right? I've been on that. It's like, hey, like especially when you're in big companies, man, that stuff is just coming down, right? It's just sliding down request after request. But if you have something that you can visually see and you can move the pieces of the puzzle, then you know and understand, okay, hey, actually, okay, if you need me to do this, I've got this, and this is attached to your request. Are there any of these 4 things right here that I can push back to here? So, right? It's kind of like a puzzle, right? Like it's a puzzle piece. So if you're doing puzzles and you're trying to maneuver and move the pieces, but the problem is the puzzle is here. Anytime I feel overwhelmed or I'm starting to feel like, oh, like I'm just the wheels are spinning so much, which is like fast way to burnout. It's because I have too much stuff here and I don't have physical puzzle pieces that I can move. Yo, like real talk. Let me show y'all something. Okay. Sticky notes. Everybody loves a good sticky note. Okay. So I have task 1, right? I'm going to take task 1. Man, I wish I had a board right now. I've got task 2, right? Actually, you know what? I do. Hold this thought. Hold on. Because I think one of the things that hold on, y'all. Bear with me. I just came up with this like out the top of my head, but give me a second. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Okay. Because I got to show you all this. If you're going to be listening to this later, my apologies in advance that you can't see this. But I want to make sure that I want to show versus tell, right? Okay. Let's see. Give me a moment. All right. I'm going to just use this one. I'm in an app. I'm in an app called Miro. So let me share my screen with you. Blah, 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 whatever. Okay. And share. Okay. I'm in an app called Miro right now. So it doesn't matter what it is, but these are sticky notes, right? This is just a to-do list. 1, 2, 3. Even if you had a sticky note section somewhere in wherever you are, right? So this is task 1, right? So this is task 1, right? Here is project X, right? Another project Y, right? Now, what starts to happen is we'll put boss request here, right? It's another boss request here. Okay, so I'm just coming in team member problem here, right? And we've got, we'll say email catch up. We're going to put that here. Okay. Now, what happens a lot of times, and this is where we talk about maneuvering some things around. Let's just say your boss comes in and has another request. So we have another request from our boss. Just got off a call. She said, "Hey, boss, report request." She needs a report. Okay. Okay. Oh, man. Okay. So now I know that right now I'm working on project X. I've got project Y. I've got email catch up. I'm going to put that here. The team member problem is here. Okay. Now, what happens is, see here, like maybe I've got these things right here. This is medium priority. This is what I'm working on right now. Well, my leader comes in and this one, he says, "Hey, this report is important." Well, if I go in and I say, "Hey, actually, I'm working on this and this. I have this request from you. I'm working on this for my team member." You don't even mention these things because they're low priority, right? I can do this, but just know that project Y that was due at this time is actually going to be moved somewhere else, or we're going to table it, right? Because and this is probably the most rudimentary version of this, but I just want to kind of show you what starts to happen. You've got to have an account of what you're working on. And it's better if it's visual. You could take something very similar to this. This is like the most simple version of it, right? And then you're just moving stuff around. Now, and here's what's crazy, because I put project X and project Y, but let's be honest, projects have multiple steps. So you may be working on project X, but it may be task 4 of 10 for project X. But you've got to know that. And so as leaders, 2 things. Encourage your team to keep track of what it is that they're working on realistically. And you should be keeping track of what you're working on. I would say that this is probably why I'm one of the biggest fans of collaborative spaces and places. A lot of people are not always fans of sharing work across and everybody being able to see it. I personally believe in radical transparency. So if you take something like the principle of OKRs, objective key results, you all have heard me talk about that. Everybody can see how everything rolls up into your objectives for your team, right? And so this piece of the puzzle, as we're talking, it's not just about tasks. We're talking about burnout and balance. You've got to make sure that your how you're getting things done is intact. Now, one of the things that I didn't talk about on here as we're talking about burnout is how behaviors. How work gets done matters. It's not just what you're working on, it's how it gets done. So if you have people who are on your team, or you have people who are stakeholders that make working difficult, that is another way to burn out. Sometimes it's not even the work. Sometimes it's like, yo, like I'm exhausted just showing up and like trying to figure out how to do my job across my teams. Right? It may not even be your nuclear team. It could be stakeholders that are making it difficult. This is when you lean into, you've got to go into problem solving mode. But if you are always running with your hair on fire, you can't see the forest through the trees, then you're not going to be able to figure out, hey, how can I fix this relationship to make my life and my team's life easier so that we're not burning out? Right? And I am not a fan if you be like, "Oh, well, that's just Susie being Susie." Nah, Susie can't be Susie with my team. That's just how it was. Right? You've got to figure it out so that because otherwise, like, who wants to show up and just be like tense all the time because you're working with somebody who doesn't have good how behaviors? Your job as a leader, it's important for your job as a leader to figure out how to help manage that so that your team is not stressed. Because if your team is stressed, you're stressed. Or if you're stressed, a lot of times you trickle it down to the team. But if you're not taking the time, and I talk about this ad nauseum, if you're not taking time to figure out your systems, if you're not taking time to figure out how to get a moment to think and breathe and not occupy your mind with other things and sometimes tasks that don't actually add value, you're not going to have time to think about those things and actually improve your team and what you're doing. And I've challenged you all week after week, set aside time to think. If you don't have time to think as a leader, you are not delegating enough, you're too busy, or you are absolutely doing stuff you have no business doing. You got to figure it out. It's important. You have to figure this out as leaders. You have to set aside time to think. If you're an individual contributor, you have to set aside time to think. Imagine, imagine here. I'll give you a great example. I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen really quickly. My little my little janky workspace that I just made real quick. Okay, this is my to-do list, okay? And I've got these things that I'm working on and I've got these projects that I'm overseeing. I may start to figure out that actually out of all these projects, I've got this task, I've got a request from my leader, I've got project Y, I've got another request from my boss, I've got a team member issue, I've got email catch up. That's just what I'm working on right now. Plus I have just every other thing that's coming in. If you don't set aside time to think, you may have found like, oh, actually, project X, I can shorten this down from 3 things to 5 things. Or actually, I can go in and I'm going to change this color. We're going to change the color. We're going to say yellow means it's a team member. So actually, I was able to delegate that to Jim. We're going to say we delegated that to Jim. But how did you know? Because you took time to think. You took time to think about it. I still got to do project Y, so that's going to stick with me. My boss request, I still have to do that. But how you go about it, if you're not scheduling time to think, you're just going to constantly say, okay, just more stuff. We're just going to keep adding more and more things are going to keep coming here over and over and over again. And then you're just going to get more overwhelmed. Oh, here's another task. Here's another task. And if you notice, they're all sitting in high priority now. Oh, there's another task. This one came from my boss again. So this one comes here. Oh, I've got another one from my team member. Let me know if this sounds familiar. Right? Oh, this one actually, this report came in from my stakeholder. So we're gonna make that one green. Okay. So now as you go throughout the week, if you notice more stuff is coming in, but if nothing is leaving, you're in trouble. And what may happen is you may, because you're trying to work on some of this stuff all simultaneously, you may get one or two. You know what? Actually, this is let me know if you're guilty. I'm guilty of it. You'd be like, man, I got so much stuff. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just gonna catch up on email. Because we go past path of least resistance. And so all of this stuff starts to feel overwhelming. So you're just like, you know what? I just need to catch up on my email because that's something I know. At least I got that done today. Meanwhile, you have all this other stuff that's hanging. Leaders, burnout and balance. You've actually, man, I need to put this on a shirt. How do you combat it? How do you combat burnout and balance? Is you need to get a task board. Get a board. Create some type of board. I don't care if it's sticky notes and a sheet of paper. And eventually move it digitally because I'm a fan of digital. You've got to figure this out. Because this train is not stopping. I hate to break it to you. You probably already know this. This train is not stopping. There's always going to be something coming in. Right? Always something coming in. And if you don't figure this out and you can't see it, you will burn out because what happens is even though let me know on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, those of you all who are watching, let me know if this is you. You get in through the day and you log in and somehow you look up and it's 6:00 and none of this stuff has moved. You started the day with 13 things and you ended the day with 13 things. How does that happen? Right? How does that happen? It happens because we're not taking time to think. I love this. So I love this. Joanna said we lose our creative edge when there is no time to think. These are facts. And I'll actually add to that, Joanna. I think that not only do we lose our creative edge, we lose our competitive edge. I'm a competitor as a leader. Real talk. I'm a competitor as a leader. I want to build the best team. My goal as a leader was to be the leader everyone wanted to work for. That was my goal. So I'm competitive. I want to build the best team with the best talent producing the most results. Right? Real talk. Okay. Oh, Joanne, I love this. You said, hold on, I'm going to share this. Let me show that. Catching up on email leaves us all leaves all of us then expecting instantaneous response and the cycle continues. 100%. 100%. Email becomes a cycle. I'm telling you, Cal Newport has a book about no emails. I not a fan of them. I get it. They're probably never going away. But I to me, what you find is email can you'll look up and you have answered all your emails and the most important things still aren't done. That's what leads to burnout. If you want to combat burnout and you want to find a level of balance, you've got to be just extreme prejudice in where you spend your time. That will also mean some people may not be 100% happy with that. And that's okay. It was okay for me as a leader. Sometimes you got to be okay. Like, hey, like I want to get this to you. I just can't get this to you now. I don't have space for it. When's the absolute latest you need this by? Is there any flexibility? Flexibility is another great way to combat burnout. Where can I actually be flexible? Do I absolutely have to do this right now? What is most important? Everything cannot be important. If everything is important, nothing is important. You have to use extreme prejudice in this. And then teaching your team to do it as well. That was probably one of the biggest aha moments I had as a leader was I think sometimes we can make the assumption that people know what's important and what they should be working on and when they should be working on it and how. But what I found was my team needed guidance to help them decipher. And once we deciphered, then we were good. But have you made it explicitly clear that this is the manner in which this is the order in which things are important? Or if they do something that's out of order, do we get frustrated that they haven't figured like, I feel like you should have known that that was important, but did they? And so by communicating, hey, team, this is high priority, this is mid priority, this is low priority. Structure your day this way. And if you do that, that can also help your team in saying, hey, like actually, if everything below this line doesn't get done that day, it's okay. Everything above this line has to get done that day. So if everything that is above this line gets done, then it's a good day. As long as everything above this line gets done, everything below here can eventually be done. I'm actually okay. You should pat yourself on the back. You should have a good day. I want you to go enjoy the weekend now. But you've got to set the standard. Where's the bar? Everything can't be above the bar. Some things have to be below. And then that allows your team also to relax. Be like, hey, okay, this is what's most important. It's real simple. When I was in sales, it was very simple. Sell. Hit your quota, right? Now we have a lot of knowledge workers and project managers, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to actually contextualize what does a win look like day to day? What does it look like? Well, have you made progress on the things that are most important? That's That should be your gauge. That should be your gauge as a leader. And then everything else, all the other minutia, all the other little stuff that fills in the space and time, it's okay if it gets undone. I promise you, 80% of the emails you read don't mean anything. That's what I learned. That was like probably one of the greatest hacks I ever had was setting my out of office and be like, yo, I'm out of office. Feel free to re-forward this email when I get back on this date. Because I'm not reading them I'm not going back through email when I come back. It's time waste. I gotta figure out my team. Make sure my team is okay. Do all of my check-ins with the team. They'll tell me if I missed anything. And I promise you, if it's important and urgent, guess what? It'll come back. It'll come back up. Some people live to work, some people work to live. But I want to implore you that there can be and should be a better way, that we can find balance in all of this. If you love it's a privilege. I love what I do. If you love what you do, that is awesome. But there's also a whole other world too, right? And so we've got to find the balance. In burnout, nobody wins when you're burned out. You don't win, your family doesn't win, the organization doesn't win, your team doesn't win. Get rest, take time off, take breathers during your day, go for a walk. Schedule time to think. I cannot stress this enough. Schedule time to think. Review your projects. Schedule a weekly review. Either at the beginning of the week or the end of the week, however you choose. Figure those things out. Don't lose your creative edge. Don't lose your competitive edge because you are bogged down in the details. Okay, look, we're about at time, so I just want to holler really quickly, let you all know once again, I'm super excited that I'm launching my Ignite Leadership Masterclass. I pushed the start date back. It's going to be starting in mid-March. If you are interested, I'm offering free leadership momentum calls, and these are just opportunity for us to chat, really understand what your needs are as a leader, as an emerging leader. And so I'll drop the link in there now for you all to take advantage of that. It's 30 minutes. We hop in, we have conversations. If nothing else, you leave with some tools and hopefully a fun conversation with me. And at the end, if you think like, hey, I really want to enjoy I enjoyed having the conversation with Latoya. I appreciate it. And we all walk away happy and you've got tips, cool. If not, then we can always find other conversations that we can have. And so I'm excited about this. Very, very much. I just realized that probably didn't make any sense, but also I'm a horrible multitasker. And so I'm also dropping the link to the course. If you want to check out, the course is 12 weeks, 12 weeks of instruction from your girl, yours truly. And also, there's group coaching, and we'll be connecting together over that course of time. And we'll be talking about lots of different leadership strategies that we'll be covering. We'll be covering, leadership, setting your leadership vision, efficiency frameworks, change management, how to maximize team impact for high performance, and then how to cultivate a high engagement culture. So all things that are going to be really necessary for you to be successful as a leader or an emerging leader. So feel free to schedule a free call. It's a 30-minute call. It's just us chatting. Where are your leadership opportunities? Where do you see yourself a year from now? I encourage you to get these sessions scheduled because I will be pausing them once the course starts because I want to be focused 100% on the course, making sure my students are getting the best of the best. This is a beta class. So I'm excited about this launch. With that being said, I'm going to head out, but thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope this was beneficial. Feel free, if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, feel free to share this. I'm here every single Tuesday. Next Tuesday, I'm actually on site with a client, so it'll be probably a greatest hits that I'll be sharing. And also I'll be on a hiatus next week because I'll be with a client, but I'll promise you won't be left empty handed. I'll figure something out. And then when I come back the next week, it will be the 20th episode of AMA with mind blown 20 episodes. So I'm excited to share that with you all, but thank you so much I appreciate it. I never take it for granted that you all spend an hour with me on Tuesdays. So I appreciate it. If there's anything you need, feel free to hop in. If you're on LinkedIn, send me a DM. And then if you're anywhere else, you can catch me. Just put my name in all the socials, it'll come up. I would love to connect with you. Thank you so much. I hope you all have an awesome, awesome week. And remember, leaders, your team follows your cues, not your quotes. All right, that's all I got for you all. Thank you so much and have an amazing rest of the day and week.